Welcome back to session 4, chapter 5 of our Lenten book study. We are in our penultimate week and our third...
Penultimate. I love that. I love
word.
She uses penultimate.
Million-dollar word. And our third gospel, the Gospel of Luke. And Luke is similar enough to Matthew and Mark to still be considered a synoptic gospel, but his approach really is quite different.
Very different.
It is more expansive and shown through like a wide angle lens than Matthew and Mark right from the start. While the Jesus in Matthew and Mark is seemingly kind of unaware, at least from our understanding, of his imminent passion and the cross and the resurrection, the Jesus in Luke's gospel appears to be keenly aware of it. In Luke, the kingdom of God includes the other, the outcast, the people on the periphery and the margins, right from the jump.
Yep.
In the birth narratives, we see God's good news of Jesus Christ being proclaimed to shepherds and magi from faraway lands. And then Jesus himself performs miracles and eats food and meals with tax collectors and Zacchaeus and the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son. God, through Luke, through the Gospel of Luke, is intentionally and consistently expanding the boundaries of welcome. And that is pretty evident in the institution of the Lord's Supper in the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus talks about how this cup is the blood of the new covenant for the people that he has, the thieves on the cross, for example, that he has yet to even meet. Consistently just saying it's not just for us, but it's for all.
And so in the process of talking about communion, he talks a lot about remembering, if you remember, if you've read that. He opens up with the reminder that Luke is the only gospel that's where Jesus at the table says, "Do this in remembrance of me." And I've thought about that a lot this week. I thought about how, and even if I personally make that connection every time I come to the communion table of the memory of Jesus' sacrifice, because so often it's easy to receive communion. It's easy to receive the perspective that Christ did this for us when he died, but he actually says, remember him when we come to the table. And remember what he did for us. And the intent is, I think, to humble us and to move us to be more close Christ followers. The second part of that is that the ones that Luke writes to are those who are often not remembered. They're the ones that are overlooked. They're the ones that are not heard. And they're the ones that Christ calls us to serve. And so this idea of remembering is important, because if we're supposed to remember that and remember him, then it moves us to remember that life is supposed to be shared and life is supposed to be revealed in how we live and how we serve Christ.
That's a good word. And after we remember, Matt Rawls shifts the focus from remembering to forgiveness. And forgiveness is just hard, you know?
Yeah.
It really is. It's not a one and done event, right? But it's a practice that we should practice every single day. And not just once a day, but continually.
All the time.
Throughout the day. Because our world is still broken. People are still hurt and hurting, and we are still learning how to forgive not just others, but ourselves as well. And it's just hard. But I love this quote from Sam Wells, who's former dean of Duke University Chapel, Go Duke. And Matt quotes it in his book, but it's actually from a sermon that Sam preached at Duke Chapel in 2007. And I'm quoting in part, "To forgive something that is still going on is a kind of category mistake. Jesus gives us plenty of ways to respond while the destructive actions are still going on, but forgiveness has to wait until the activity is over. You can't forgive something that's still going on, because that seems to be saying that what is going on is the whole story and that it's somehow okay."
And it is not.
Correct.
That's the process of forgiveness, and that's what makes it hard, is we can't force anyone to do anything, but we can look for and provide opportunities for maybe that forgiveness to come. And recognize our part, but also recognize their part, but set a boundary to live into that.
Word.
So there's a power and a connection when it comes to the concepts, these concepts for in order to forgive and or in order to be forgiven, we have to remember and we have to claim that need for forgiveness. But I think what's more importantly, and he says, I remember I was in seminary and I had a professor who said the same thing. We need to remember that Jesus is the one that forgives and the one who also remembers but forgives anyway. And if we are supposed to be like Jesus, that's what we're supposed to do. We remember, but we forgive anyway, and we do things differently. If we're the offender, we encourage the other to do things differently, and we give some grace, but we also hold accountable if that action begins to kick in again. So Jesus models that we are not to forgive and forget, but we forgive and remember, and then we seek not to do it again, or we seek to help one another to not do it again when it comes to forgiveness.
Yeah, that's what makes us different than I think the rest of the world too. Is like they say forgive and forget, and we say remember and forgive anyway.
Yes.
So a few questions for you. How does Jesus connect this Passover meal with his disciples to the kingdom of God? And what is a covenant? My confirmation kids should be able to tell you that. What is a covenant, and what does Jesus mean by speaking of a new covenant in his blood?
And so only in Luke's account of the gospel does Jesus appear before Pilate during his passion. Raul talks about that. So why does Luke say Pilate sent Jesus to Herod? And why does Luke say that Herod was glad to see Jesus? If you've seen Jesus Christ Superstar, you may have a bit of an interesting perspective on that. But why do you think Jesus doesn't answer any of Herod's questions? And how is that silence related or unrelated to the answer that he gives the council in Luke 22, 66 to 71? That's all in your syllabus, by the way. And then how do you practice remembrance as a spiritual discipline in your own life? Which is a big question about, at least for me, it's how do we forgive ourselves? And how does that practice of remembering affect our faith and how we live it out? Some good questions for us. And I think it's going to be a good discussion this week. And we're excited to have you guys continue to come back.
Yep.
So we will see you on
Monday
and on Wednesday. And y'all have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.